Welcome back, fourth grade. This is your math lesson for today. It is lesson 102, and you're going to need your book, a pencil, and paper. So if you don't have those things, go ahead and pause the video, go find them, and come back and restart the video. All right, guys, I'm going to assume you all have your books, you're all back, and you're ready for math. Let's go ahead and pray and start our class for today. The Lord be with you. Dear Heavenly Father, we love you. We thank you for this beautiful day. Thank you for great weather so we can enjoy being outside on these days that we're home. God, please help us to be patient, to be diligent in our studies, and to just be thankful for all the ways that you've blessed us during this time. We love you, Lord. Amen. All right, guys, I'm going to assume that you have already practiced your math facts, that you have already gone through your skip counting jingles. You've been practicing those. You should be practicing them at least 2 or 3 times a week. I know you feel silly doing them at home, but you can do it. Many of you have siblings. Have them do it right there with you. All right, so today's lesson is about measurement, decimal numbers, tenths, and hundredths. And what you see up here on my board is roughly the same thing that is in your math book. We're on page 474, lesson 102. Page 474. All right, let's talk a little bit about measurement and number lines and equivalent measures. Today we're going to be talking about millimeters, centimeters, and meters. So what type of measurement system is that? What measurement system would those different measurements be a part of? You're right, it's the metric system. There are 2 different types of measurements that we use in the United States. We use standard or customary measurements like the inch, the foot, and the yard, and also the metric system. So today we're looking at millimeters and centimeters and meters as well. All right, so go ahead and either look in your book or up on the board. Either is fine with me. You can follow along in your book and just listen to me, or you can not follow along in your book and just look right up at the board. And then when I cue you to your book, you'll know just where to look. So I have drawn for you the same diagrams that are in your book, except mine are bigger, because if I drew them to scale, they would be too small for you to see up here on my board. So if you look at the ones in your book, those are to scale. I want everyone to hold up their smallest finger, your pinky finger. The width of your pinky finger from one side to the other is approximately 1 centimeter. Now, what does that mean, approximately? It means it's not exact. Some of you may measure it and find that yours is exactly 1 centimeter. But for most of us, it's just kind of a ballpark figure. It gives us an idea about how big a centimeter is. Well, within that one little pinky finger centimeter, there are how many millimeters? Do you remember? There are 10. There are 10. So millimeters are really, really tiny. We're measuring today with some millimeters. If I drew them that small, you would never be able to see them on my board. So I drew mine much larger. I have a millimeter ruler and a centimeter ruler up here on my board. And I've drawn between them a red line, and we're going to measure that using millimeters. We're going to measure it using centimeters, and then we're going to talk about the different ways that you can name those measurements. So let's look first at the millimeter ruler. If you look at my ruler, you can see there's very small markings, and every 10 markings I've written a larger digit up here so we can count by 10s. We have 10, 20, 30, and then in between we have all these small markings. In between each of these there are 10 millimeters. Let's count these first ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now if you look down here in the measurement below, we have a centimeter ruler. Our markings are the same size, but our numbers are a little bit different. This is 1 centimeter. For every 1 centimeter, how many millimeters do we have? Correct, there are 10. Let's look at the millimeter ruler and see if we can find a name for this length. Let's count by 10s, then we'll add on by 1s. 10, 20, 21, 22, 23. Now you also could have counted that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Both ways are correct. It's just a little easier to group by tens. We're going to write this measurement as 23 millimeters, 2 lowercase m's. Now let's look at the centimeter ruler. Here we're going to count again using the markings on the ruler. 1 centimeter, 2 centimeters. Now we have to find a word for these markings in between 2 and 3. Well, there are 10 small marks in between the 2 and the 3, so that means each small mark is 1, you're right, 1/10. 1/10. Let's count them. We made it to the 2. And 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, and we're at the end of our line. So this line is 2 3/10 centimeters. Now there are 2 different ways to write that number. You may write as a decimal 2 and, there's your decimal, 3/10 centimeters, the lowercase c and lowercase m, or you can write it as a mixed number, 2 and 3/10 centimeters. 23 millimeters, 2 3/10 centimeters, 2 3/10 centimeters. They all name the same length. This red line can be described in any of these 3 ways. Let's look now to the next example in your book. Well, what about a measurement or a number line that's divided into tenths, but we don't know what the unit of measurement is? Maybe it's just a number line. Well, we can also divide between 2 numbers into 10 equal spaces. Here I have a 2, a 3, and a 4, and my arrow is pointing just past the 3. I went ahead and marked for us the middle point between the 2 and the 3, and I put a decimal point and a 5. Remember, if these are divided into 10 equal spaces, each one is 1/10. So this point right here in the middle would be 2 5/10. Well, let's look and see if we can figure out where this arrow is pointing. We have 2, 3. Now we need to count by tenths. We're at the very first spot, so we are going to name this spot as 3 1/10. Can you tell me another way to write that number? It's a mixed number, you are right. 3 1/10. Both of these numbers name this point on my number line. All right, last one up on my board here. Here's a 3, and there's the 4 all the way down here, and I'm wondering what this spot is right here. How many lines do you think there are in between my 3 and my 4? There are, well, there's supposed to be 100. I'm not sure if I exactly got 100 in there. I got a little squished at the very end. It started out pretty good, and then I kind of got squished at the end there. If we're going to assume and call this 100 little marks in between the 3 and the 4, and if you look at the one in your book, they are to scale and they are correct. It's just a little bit harder to get it up here on my board and get those accurate. All right, I counted over to where my dot is. Assuming that there are 100 dots, let's count and see what we're going to call this dot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. This number can also be written in 2 ways. 3 and 25, do you know? Hundredths, because there are 100 marks. The other way we can write this number is with a mixed number. 3 and 25 100ths. All right, if this is confusing to you at all, pause the video, go back, look over it again. If you feel like you're ready to do the examples, go ahead and open up your book, 475, and let's go over the examples and a little bit of the practice, and then you can get right into your written practice for today. If you will look at example 1, you will see this problem. Santiago is 162 centimeters tall. What is Santiago's height in meters? Well, we have to think first, how many centimeters are in a meter? I bet that, like me, most of you do not have a meter stick at your house. Well, I made one, and you can make one too if you want to. I taped together some note cards, and I measured out 1 meter. How many centimeters are in 1 meter? Who remembers? 100. So this is 100 centimeters. So if we were measuring Santiago, it would take this whole meter stick, and then we'd have to count up to 62 more centimeters to come up with 162 centimeters for his height. So how are we going to figure out what his height is then in meters? Well, let's look in our book. Look at the solution. 100 centimeters equals 1 meter. So Santiago's height is 1 meter plus 62 centimeters. Remembering that a centimeter is 100th of a meter, we now know, let's see, I think I'm going to need to erase this to give us a little bit more space up here. So 162 centimeters is equal to 1 meter plus 62 centimeters. We know that each centimeter is 100th of a meter. So the way we can write this then is 1 and 62 hundredths meters. How would we write this number as a decimal? 1 and 62 hundredths meters. If you have a meter stick in your house, see if someone can measure your height in centimeters. See if you can figure out what your height is in meters. All right, don't turn your page. Look at example 2. It says, write the decimal number to which each arrow points. Look at number line A. 8, 9, 10. And between the 9 and the 10, we have an arrow. Count over and see how many tenths are between that 9 and the 10. It's divided into 10 equal parts. To what tenth is that arrow pointing? It is pointing to the 6th one. So your answer is 9 and 6 tenths. To write that as a decimal, we would write 9 and 6 tenths. Look at B. B has a number line that is marked already with decimals. We are between the 7 and the 8, and it's already marked 7 and 1/10, 2 tenths, 3 tenths, 4 tenths, 5 tenths, 5 tenths. And then in between those tenths, we have another set of markings. They're again divided into tenths. Tenths divided into tenths, those must be hundredths. There are 100 spaces between the 7 and the 8. So to what number is that arrow pointing? It is pointing to 7 and You see the 5, the decimal point in the 5? How many little spots left to the right of it? There are 2, so 51, 52, 7 and 52 hundredths. All right, look at example 3. Round 9 6/10 to the nearest whole number. We need to think about what we know about rounding. Look at this number, 9 6/10. Is it closer to 9 or is it closer to 10? Remember, when we round, we always look at the next digit, and if it's 5 or higher, we're going to round up. If it's 4 or lower, we're going to round down. 6 is higher than 5, so we're going to round up. This number is between 9 and 10. We're going to the higher number, which is 10. Round 7 and 52 hundredths to the nearest 10th. So we're rounding to the 10th place, so we're going to look at the hundredths place. Is it 5 or higher? It is not. It is lower. We're rounding down. So we're going to round 7 and 52 hundredths is between 7 and 5/10 and 7 and 6/10. We're going to choose the lower of the two, 7 and 5/10 is how we round. If you have any questions or if you want to look at that again, go ahead and look back over it again. Then turn your page and notice we have an activity. It says you're going to need a meter stick, a pencil, and a piece of paper. Using a meter stick, measure the heights or widths of various objects in your classroom, which of course right now is your home, such as doors, tables, desks, or books. Measure to the nearest centimeter and record each measurement twice, once in centimeters and once in meters. All right, for example, the height of your door might be 203 centimeters, which is 2 3/100 meters. Now, I was thinking I might use my homemade meter stick to measure Mac or Molly, but they've been banned to outside because they were barking too much. So we're just going to measure a couple of other things. Let's see. I think I'm going to measure my height. That's what I'm going to measure. Oh my goodness, I'm almost the same height as my board. Look at that. I'm almost the same height as my board. Almost exactly. All right, so here's my meter stick. Here's 100 centimeters. And let's see how many more centimeters I need to measure to make it all the way down to the floor. All right, I made it to 50, 60, 59. So if I am 159 centimeters, how do I convert that to meters? I need to remember that 100 of those centimeters is 1 meter. So there's 1 and the decimal point. And then how many hundredths did I have? 59. I am 1 59 hundredths meters tall. I wonder how tall you are, or your mom, or your dad, or a door in your house, or something else. Measure anything that you want to measure. Remember, you don't have to do this activity, but you can if you want to. It's kind of fun to measure some different things in your house and then try to convert those. Let's look at the practice set in the lesson practice, and then I'm going to let you guys go and get right into your written practice. Look at the practice set. Look at A. Julie jumped over a bar that was 167 centimeters high. How many meters high was the bar? So we have 167 centimeters. Let's see. 167 centimeters. We're going to convert that to meters. We know that 100 of those centimeters would be 1 meter. And then how many hundredths do we have? 67. 1 67 hundredths meters. Now look at B. Round 6 8/10 to the nearest whole whole number. 6 8/8 is between 6 and 7. We're going to look at the very next digit, which is an 8. Is that 5 or higher? Yes, it is. So we're going to say it is closer to 7. Look at C. Oh, it is not C. I skipped from A to H. Look at that. Look at I. Round 4 44/100ths to the nearest whole number. 4 44/100ths. 4 44/100ths is between 4 and 5. Look at the number in the tenths. Is that 5 or higher? No, it is not. So it is closer to the 4. Now look at J. Round 4 44/100ths to the nearest tenth. If we're going to stop at the nearest tenth, we're going to look at the number in the hundredths place. We're looking at this number is between 4 4/10 and 4 5/10. Is 4 5 or higher? No, it is not. So we're rounding down to 4 4/10. If you feel like you need a little bit more practice naming points on a number line, look at B through G. There are several number lines where you can practice naming those points on the number line. Then when you feel comfortable, go ahead and get into your written practice. Have a wonderful day. I miss you guys.